Starting tomorrow, Brandon and his parents live here, my sister announced. If you don't like it, move out. I smiled and placed the closing folder beside her plate. The house sold this morning. Nobody breathed. Then Brandon's father stood, holding up a bank transfer. You took $24,000 from us for rooms in a house you never owned. Kayla's face drained. What the hell did you do? I sold my house. But the last message in that folder proved the money was only step one. Kayla had a second plan, one that could trap me in a lawsuit with the new owners before they ever received the keys. My name is Erin Walsh, and at 34, I had learned that saving the family home did not make my family see it as mine. I worked as a senior project controls manager for a healthcare construction company outside Cincinnati. My job was built around budgets, contracts, payment approvals, and one basic rule, a promise, did not create ownership. 6 years earlier, my parents were 3 months behind on the mortgage. Dad had been injured, his repair business was collapsing, property taxes were overdue, and the bank had started foreclosure proceedings. I did not simply hand them cash. I hired a real estate attorney, ordered an independent appraisal, and bought the house through a title company for $318,000. The sale paid off the mortgage, tax lien, and part of Dad's business debt. The deed transferred to me alone. The new mortgage, insurance, taxes, and legal liability were mine alone. My parents signed documents confirming they no longer held equity. In return, I let them stay without rent for as long as the arrangement remained workable. I postponed buying my own place and spent the next 6 years paying more than $226,000 toward the mortgage. Taxes, insurance, a new roof, HVAC, plumbing repairs, electrical work, and an accessible bathroom for Mom and Dad. Kayla contributed $300 a month for a while, then stopped paying regularly. She still called it Mom and Dad's house. Whenever I corrected her, she said, "It's the family home in every way that matters. Every way except the deed, mortgage, taxes, insurance, and liability," I would answer. Mom usually told me not to be so technical. Erin doesn't need much, she would say. She has her career. That sentence became Kayla's excuse for treating my space like unused family inventory. 3 months before that dinner, Dad admitted the stairs were becoming difficult. Mom wanted something smaller. I had also accepted a hybrid role closer to Blue Ash and no longer wanted to maintain 4 bedrooms for people who handed out keys without asking me. So I began selling the house. I emailed everyone the timeline, mailed written notices, found my parents a 1-level condo, and gave Kayla the possession date. She replied, "You cannot sell Mom and Dad's house." I assumed she was in denial. What I did not know was that while I was arranging a legal sale, Kayla was already offering pieces of the property to people who believed she had authority to promise them. Kayla was 27 and worked as a social media coordinator for a local med spa chain. She earned enough to support herself, but she spent as if every future paycheck had already arrived. Her car was financed, her credit cards stayed near their limits, and every trip became someone else's emergency when the payment came due. Her boyfriend, Brandon Cole, was 30 and managed operations at a fitness center. He wanted to leave his 1-bedroom apartment, but neither of them could afford the kind of house they imagined they deserved. Brandon's parents had their own problem. Victor was approaching retirement, and the rent on the townhouse he shared with Linda was increasing again. They had $24,000 saved from selling their RV, but nowhere near enough for a down payment. Kayla offered them a solution. She said my house would eventually belong to her and me. She claimed I was moving closer to work and had agreed to let Brandon's family use 2 bedrooms while she and Brandon renovated the basement. She even created a 2-page document titled Household Contribution Agreement under her signature. She gave herself a position that did not exist: Family Property Representative. The agreement promised Victor and Linda at least 5 years in the house, 6 months without additional payments, and the possibility that their contribution could later count toward equity. My name appeared nowhere on it. Victor asked who legally owned the property. Kayla told him, "Erin handles the paperwork, but this is our parents' home." They believed her. Meanwhile, I began noticing strange things. A contractor arrived to measure the basement. Brandon asked for the garage code. Linda casually asked whether I preferred beige or pale green for her room. Furniture boxes appeared near the garage wall. Then Kayla changed the Wi-Fi name to Walsh Cole House. I emailed her immediately. No new occupants, renovations, copied keys, or guests staying longer than 7 days without my written permission. She replied with a laughing emoji. By then, I had already signed a purchase agreement with Nathan and Elise Harper. They had 2 children, had sold their previous home, and needed possession on schedule. Closing was set for Friday morning. The sale included a 30-day occupancy period for us to remove our belongings, but the contract prohibited new residents, renovations, subleasing, or changing the locks. Kayla received the same timeline as everyone else. She ignored it. Friday afternoon. Hours after closing, she texted the family chat, "Dinner tonight. Everyone needs to be there. We're settling the house situation once and for all." I put the closing folder in my bag. I still did not know she had already collected $24,000. Mom had made lasagna, and Kayla had arranged the table like she was hosting a negotiation. Victor brought wine. Linda carried paint samples. Several moving boxes were already stacked inside the garage. When Linda mentioned planting roses along the back fence, I realized she truly believed the house had been promised to her. Kayla waited until everyone was seated. "Starting tomorrow, Brandon and his parents live here." I set down my fork. "Who approved that Mom and Dad agree it makes sense?" Dad answered immediately. "No, I did not." Mom looked uncomfortable. I said we could discuss whether it might help with expenses. Kayla waved that away. "There are 4 bedrooms. Aaron uses 1 and an office. Brandon and I can take the basement, and his parents can use the other rooms. I own every room, including the ones I do not sleep in." Kayla laughed. "This is still a family home. It is property titled solely to me. You always hide behind paperwork. The mortgage company, insurance company, and county recorder seem to appreciate paperwork." Brandon leaned forward. "My parents would contribute. This helps everyone." I looked at him. "Did I ever tell you that you could move in?" He glanced at Kayla. She answered for him. "You are one person. You do not need an entire house." Then she delivered the line she had clearly rehearsed. "If you have a problem with that, you can move out." I smiled, opened my bag, and set the closing folder beside her plate. "That will not be necessary. The house sold this morning." Nobody spoke. Kayla gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You cannot sell Mom and Dad's home." Dad looked at her. "Aaron bought this house 6 years ago when the bank was about to take it. It has not belonged to us since." I opened the folder. The recorded deed names Nathan and Elise Harper as the owners. "We have 30 days to remove our belongings. The occupancy agreement prohibits new residents, renovations, subleasing, or changing the locks." Mom stared at me. "You already closed. I sent everyone the date 3 times. Linda slowly placed her paint samples on the table. "You said Aaron had approved this." Kayla's voice sharpened. "The sale can be reversed." "No," I said. "It cannot." Victor stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. He held up his phone. "You took $24,000 from us for a house you never owned." Brandon turned toward Kayla. "What 24,000?" Victor placed bank confirmations and a 2-page agreement on the table. 12,000 for an occupancy buy-in, 6,000 in prepaid household contributions, 6,000 for renovations. I read the signature line, "Family Property Representative." Kayla had invented herself a title because the real deed gave her nothing. Brandon stared at her. "You told me they were contributing 6,000. Kayla looked from him to his parents. "We were going to make it work." Victor played a voice message. Kayla's voice filled the dining room. "Once you pay the buy-in, Aaron cannot change her mind." Then he opened the next message. And that was when I learned the $24,000 had never been her entire plan. Victor played the second message. Kayla's voice came through clearly. "If your parents move in before Aaron hands over the keys, the buyers will back out. Once everyone is inside, she won't risk throwing 4 people onto the street." Brandon closed his eyes. "You knew the house was selling," Kayla snapped. "I knew Aaron was trying to sell it." "That is not the same thing," I said. "It was still our family home. No, it was the house you were trying to trap me inside." Kayla accused me of selling just to punish her. I opened the timeline in the closing folder. The first written notice had gone out 3 months earlier. The purchase agreement was signed 6 weeks before dinner. The inspection happened 4 weeks earlier. The appraisal followed. My parents had already signed the lease on their one-level condo. The closing date had been emailed to everyone 3 separate times. I warned you privately for 3 months, I said. You only listened when the deed spoke louder than I did. Brandon looked at his father. I didn't know about the 24,000. Victor's expression did not soften. You may not have taken our money, but you were willing to occupy a house after the owner said no. Brandon had no answer. That night, I called Melissa Grant, the attorney who handled the sale. I explained the moving boxes, Kayla's agreement, and the messages about forcing the buyers out. Melissa's response was immediate. No one new enters the property. No keys, no furniture, no overnight stays. She sent formal notice to Kayla, Brandon, and both families. The document stated that Kayla had no ownership interest, no authority to create a tenancy, and no right to promise future equity. Kayla could promise them a bedroom, the moon, or half the county, Melissa told me. She could not transfer an interest she never owned. I notified Nathan and Elise Harper before they could hear a distorted version. Nathan was quiet for a moment. We bought a house, not a family conflict. You will receive the house you contracted for, I said. I reset the garage code, collected the copied keys, photographed every room, and confirmed the moving schedule. I did not cut the utilities, lock anyone out, or throw a single box onto the driveway. The people already living there still had 30 days. No one else was moving in. Victor and Linda demanded their money back. Kayla claimed she could return it after the house situation was fixed. Victor asked to see the account. She had only $2,000 left. The rest had already gone. 7,800 paid credit cards. 5,500 went toward a wedding deposit. 4,200 became the down payment on her new car. 2,600 paid for a trip with Brandon. 1,900 bought furniture for rooms she did not own. Linda stared at Kayla. We trusted you because you called us family. I was going to make it work once everyone moved in, Kayla said. Victor answered. You spent our money before you had the right to offer us anything. Mom turned to me. Could you use part of the sale proceeds to repay them now Kayla could pay you back? No, Aaron. They canceled their lease because of this. I did not create their loss, and I am not paying $24,000 to erase Kayla's lie. Kayla's face hardened. You made money from the house. You can fix this. Having money does not make your debt mine. Victor's attorney added the lease cancellation fee, storage costs, moving expenses, and legal fees to the amount Kayla owed. By Monday, $24,000 had become $31,150. Kayla could not pay it, but the repayment proposal required her to give up the 2 things she had bought to prove she was finally independent. Kayla's repayment agreement required the $2,000 left in her account immediately. The furniture order was canceled, returning another $1,400. Then she had to sell the new car. After the loan balance and fees were cleared, $5,700 went to Victor and Linda. The wedding deposit was non-refundable, so Kayla lost $5,500 without reducing what she owed. The remaining balance would be paid over 30 months. If she missed 2 installments, the entire amount became due and Victor could pursue a civil judgment. Kayla called the terms cruel. Victor looked at her across Melissa's conference table. You sold us 5 years in a house you never owned. This is the part where you pay for the promise. Brandon did not defend her. He had learned the wedding deposit came from his parents' money and that Kayla had hidden the real amount from him. I thought we were forcing a family decision, he admitted. I did not know you were selling my parents a lie. Kayla turned on him. You knew Aaron said no. He could not deny it. Brandon moved back to his apartment, postponed their engagement, and demanded a complete list of Kayla's debts before discussing marriage again. Mom was slower to understand. You could have warned everyone before dinner. She told me. I warned this family for 3 months. Kayla invited an audience because she thought it would make my no disappear. Mom looked toward the living room where she had raised us. I kept calling it our home because admitting it was yours reminded me that you had saved us. It was the first apology she gave without asking me to repair the consequences afterward. Dad spoke more plainly. Erin did not sell our home out from under us. She bought it when the bank was about to take it. 2 weeks later, my parents moved into their one-level condo. It had 2 bedrooms, an elevator, and a grocery store less than 5 minutes away. I paid the moving company because I had promised that long before Kayla's scheme surfaced. Kayla received no such rescue. She packed her own belongings, rented her own storage unit, and returned every copied key when she tried leaving the new furniture in the basement. I stopped her. You do not get to turn your bad purchase into my moving cost. Victor and Linda collected the unopened boxes they could return. They found another rental, though their new deposit and lease penalties were included in Kayla's repayment balance. On possession day, I walked through every room with Melissa. No new occupants, no changed locks, no damage. I reset the garage codes, paid for the final cleaning, and handed the keys to Nathan and Elise exactly when the contract required. A week later, they sent me a photograph of their children standing on the front steps. I expected grief. Instead, I felt relief. I had kept that house for years because I believed preserving the building meant preserving the family. Selling it showed me how often the building had been used to make my boundaries look selfish. The equity paid for a smaller 2-bedroom condo near Blue Ash, rebuilt my emergency fund, and left money invested for my future. Kayla asked me for a loan to accelerate her repayment plan. No, you have the money. Having money does not make your debt mine. Months later, she appeared at my condo. You embarrassed me in front of Brandon's parents. You invited them to watch you order me out of my own house. You could have told me privately. I did. You only listened when the deed spoke louder than I did. She looked around at the smaller rooms. You destroyed the future I was trying to build. You collected money for a future you did not own. It was supposed to stay a family home. Family is not a deed. And affection is not a lease. Kayla left without apologizing, but for the first time. She also left without a key. 3 months later, while making another installment, she texted, "You got your sale. Mom and Dad are settled. What else do you want?" I looked around the only home where every key, bill, and decision belonged to me. This time, I knew exactly how to answer. I typed, "Nothing from you. That is the boundary," Kayla replied. "So one mistake means I'm not welcome." It wasn't one mistake. You took money, promised rooms you didn't own, and tried to use 4 people to stop my sale. At dinner, Mom said, "At least everyone has somewhere to live now." "Yes," I said, because the owners made their own decisions. Dad looked at Kayla. "That includes Aaron." I locked my phone and slipped my condo key into my pocket. The house sold. What disappeared with it was my family's belief that they could spend my ownership without permission. Would you have exposed Kayla at the table? Comment below and subscribe for more family betrayal and clean revenge stories.